for the purpose of both of us learning from one another and both of us coming out better informed about information, period, about whatever the situation is. But because you think that there has to be a loser and a winner and you think you're going to win, I'm going to let you know now. No, no. First of all, I'm going to point out the fact that you are obsessed with winning a conversation on information you know nothing about. You know very little. So let me school you for a minute. I had to calm myself down and like take a step back. But these are the kind of conversations we have on a regular basis in many different arenas, whether it be professional organizations that are meant to be international. And you would think the people who are coming to the table are there with open minds. And no, not. They're there to boast about themselves and continue to try to perpetuate the status quo of everything white is right and everything anything else is wrong. Again, there's this hierarchy where they have to be on top. But I had to point out to this particular person that if the only way you feel like you can be up is by putting your foot on somebody else's neck to push them down, then you don't really have anything to stand on. If you can't stand in the room by yourself and be of upstanding person, if you can't see value in who you are without any comparison to anyone else, then what really do you bring to the table that has any value at all? So, of course, as you were speaking before, you mentioned the philosophy of Ubuntu, which goes by many, many, many names. But in South Africa, the term Ubuntu, which I have taken on as my personal philosophy as well, that I am because we are. You know, a person is a person unto persons, and I've been blessed to have people around me who remind me that sometimes people throw in the word other. A person is a person unto other persons. I'm like, no, there is no other. There is no need for othering. We are all together, and that we have a personal responsibility to one another. And even the word, another, like, how do you say that? How do you get around these terms? It's this language we've been using that continues to put people into categories and groups as if we're not all connected. But that's the issue that we're having now. I mean, we're dealing with global warming. There were 2 fires in the middle of water, like the Caspian Sea. There's fire coming out of the sea in the Gulf of Mexico, in the Caspian Sea. And there's an entire town went up in flames, killing tons of people, and the entire town is now ashes because of global warming. But let somebody talk, not realizing that the damage that they've been doing for years, it affects everybody. We had frozen pipes in Texas, which is known as the Southwest, which is usually a very hot place. We don't worry about that kind of stuff in Texas, but pipes are being frozen. People are running out of water. All this stuff is happening around us, and those people who don't feel the instant effects of it, who are watching the TV and wondering, wow, it's even tonight when I thought about the fact that today is the 4th of July. It's the U.S. Independence Day, and they celebrate with fireworks to sound like bombs bursting in the air. But I had to think about that for a moment. Now, who in the world wants to celebrate the sounds of bombs bursting in the air? You know what? People who've never really had real bombs bursting in the air above their heads. People who've never really been in that. Nobody would be excited about these fireworks that sound like bombs bursting in the air if they had ever had a real bomb. It's not a pretty sight. Even the song, the national anthem, the bombs bursting in there. The song is so violent. And that's just the first verse. The second verse actually talks about slavery in a very, that's why they don't sing the second verse. It talks about slavery in a very, in a way that glorifies it. It's like, no, it was never cool. It was never okay. It was never a good thing. And so
but that is where the story that is where the story of the United States is coming from. Because without slavery,
right.
how is that? Because okay, now you see,
violence.
the thing is that we need to really look at the issue the way they really are. No, I think one American historian was referring to the fact that the United States was is a country that is built for a certain category of people, and other category of people are just there to serve them. And we need to
Mm-hmm.
realize that this is the way it is, so that we can sort of or change that situation, or at least understand that this is the way it is. Instead of, because when the African American, for example, are then asking that system that was never built for them to respect them, it becomes
Mm-hmm.
very difficult because it was never structured like that. So that they are glorifying slavery, it is very normal for them. It is only to the victim that it is not normal. Because it is not normal that I should be a servitude. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Now that would point me to another aspect of the question that I want to ask you, which has to do with why do you think that this deliberate effort to miseducate the African people, not only the African American, I repeat again, this is happening all over. Michael Garvey was referring to the issue of the global Africa, because what was happening in the United States was happening just all across. As it was happening
Yep.
in the US, it was happening in the mother Africa. So that those
Yep.
things that you are referring to, that maybe children in Brooklyn have very little idea about African history, I can tell you
Mm-hmm.
confidently that even me that grew up in Nigeria, a certain aspect, no, a huge aspect of my history was never taught to me in the school in
Mm-hmm.
Nigeria.
Right.
Recently, the Minister of Education in Nigeria had to be bold enough to say that history should be removed from the Nigeria curriculum. So what I'm saying is that all of us, all Africans, are suffering the same thing all over.
Exactly. As well as in all throughout South America, which is predominantly African, all throughout Central America, the Caribbean, you name it, everywhere we go, it's the same problem. This is a global issue, which is why global Africa needs to come together as a collective. There is no way that we can not come together if we actually intend to make any changes, to make any progress. Um, yeah, literally everywhere I go, it's the same issue. It doesn't stop. And I laugh not because it's funny, but because it's just wild. It's like, wow, it's almost unbelievable, but we're living it. Repeat the question for me one more time. I just want to make sure I'm answering the right.
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, what I wanted to ask you right now is that why do you think that is this there is this deliberate effort to miseducate the African people?
Oh, yes, that, yes. Why is there a deliberate effort to miseducate us? Because if you control the minds of people, you don't have to worry about what their bodies. Carter G. Woodson said it best in his book, Miseducation of
Negro.
the of the Negro. I mean, you can go back to Walter Rodney, you can go back to W.E.B. Du Bois, you can go back to many of the scholars. Patrice
Patrice
Lumumba.
Lumumba.
Yeah, you go. I mean, you go through any of the politicians, the leaders, the people who have stood up, the people who have been killed for speaking up. And this is why, I mean, when people ask, who are today's leaders? We don't need one person to be a leader. We need everybody to be singing the same song. We need everybody to understand their history, to understand this information, because we're all being fed the wrong information. We're all being miseducated. So much so that my friend, who is Puerto Rican descent, who is very proud of her African heritage, she has fair I'd say she's like a butterscotch, if you will. She's not white, but she's also not dark skinned. However, when she just moved to Uganda, to one of the international schools there, she was so excited, had all this plans. She had moved. She was ready to live her life there for many years to come, only to be told that she would not be rehired for a second year. Why? Because she wasn't white enough. And there were complaints from the Ugandan parents who were paying big money for their kids to go to this international school because her as a teacher, she wasn't white enough for them. And she was doing too much teaching about their own history. Now, my friend, she know better. Her father was a Black Panther. if you know anything about the Black Panthers, we were all very much about solidarity, about knowledge and identity, and education, and so Black Power. So she was teaching the students about themselves, about loving who they are, their own identity. It wasn't about white history or any of that. She was teaching them about themselves, and the parents were upset because they didn't want their children to be learning that. And I was like, wait a minute, the parents didn't want their kids to know this? You mean the parents were upset that they weren't coming home talking about that they were coming home talking about their own history and heritage that my friend deliberately studied so that she could know? No, no, no. Mm-mm. They wanted more information about America, about the US.